Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, the tell-all. Let's watch.
Okay, we're going to dig into that a little later.
But for now, we're going to move on. When Gino traveled to Panama, he brought along some blue pills in case he needed help performing with Jasmine. He didn't end up needing them.
So this word performing is a huge problem in our society. Think about how we use different language when it comes to women. Now, we are sex shaming of everyone, regardless of gender. When we talk about women, sometimes we're talking about lubrication. And sometimes you need a product. You wouldn't say that she brought along lubrication because she was worried about performing well, right? In fact, some people might even blame them in a heterosexual relationship or in a relationship, the partner, for not provoking lubrication naturally. We wouldn't frame it that way. We would still shame it because we shame sexuality in general. But when it comes to men, it's a performance. It's endurance. It's like you're in the Tour de France or something. The performance. You're on stage. If there are issues with erections, it's often a sign that you're not a real man, right? It's like, oh, you're not virile. You're not macho. You're not manly. You lack testosterone. This kind of you're not confident. You are a wet noodle, if you will. It's all wrapped up in toxic masculinity, right? It's all wrapped up in this notion that you're supposed to be quote unquote up for it at all times. You don't need to feel love. You don't need to be relaxed. You don't need to be seduced. You don't need to be sensually revved up, if you will. It's just supposed to be boom, you're ready to go, because that's the myth. And sometimes I'll even be talking to women and couples, I'll use that as an example, where there's this notion and the couple will have this, and what'll happen is it'll absolutely produce a complex in the man because they believe there's something wrong with them. And often, not always, the answer is the same things that we would apply to a woman. When a woman talks about she wasn't aroused, typically, hopefully, there's a conversation around, well, how do we get there? More foreplay, feeling comfortable, having a ramp up, having emotional closeness. Often, it's the same solution for the man, but of course, it's rarely discussed or thought of because men are seen differently, which is ridiculous.
Huh? We were gonna have sex this morning. So I went to the gym and I asked him to wait for me. But when I came back from the gym, Gino was like avoiding me. And I was like, why, baby? What happened? And then he told me like, well, baby, because I was playing with my pee-pee.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, frank talk, and this is good. Sex positivity. There's nothing strange about any of this right now. And perfectly normal conversation that could be had by a couple. So she's saying that they woke up together and she said, I want to have sex with you, but I want to go to the gym first. So, wait for me. She goes to the gym. She comes back. He is being a little standoffish. And then he's like, well, actually, I can't have sex because I was just playing with my pee-pee, as they put it. Okay. Now, she could say, oh, bummer, or, well, let's wait a few hours. Or he could say something like, I don't know, I couldn't wait, or whatever. It happens. In and of itself, it's just a thing that happened between them. It's not an alarming situation.
Playing with the pee-pee without me, to me, it is cheating.
It was more because we had such a busy day planned.
Okay, so he's saying we had such a busy day planned, so I'm guessing what he's about to say is, when we have sex, it takes a lot of time, so I thought it'd be more efficient this way. But she said something interesting. She's saying for you to do that, I don't know what language is going to get me flagged by YouTube, by the way. But for her to say, she's saying for you to do that's cheating to me. Okay. That is okay. It's not the norm, at least in mainstream American society. I don't know what's the norm in Panama, but for her, she's saying it's cheating, and some people, it's a religious thing. That's fine. It's important to have those conversations, maybe in the very beginning of a dating relationship, because if she's a hard line on that, then, and he is not willing to stop that, which would be fine, then that could be a big problem, right? So let's see how they manage this.
Didn't think we would have time.
Baby, doesn't matter. We will make the time. It can be a quickly.
You couldn't wait an hour?
I'm really sorry.
Yes, you're gonna be punished.
Oh,
Okay, so she's saying, doesn't matter, we could have a quickly. I like that. He is like, well, okay, and she's like, you're going to be punished. So in the past, I didn't know what she meant by that, and I guess I still don't. Is she being playful and she isn't going to hurt him emotionally? Or is she going to do that? Is she going to hold this against him and hold it over his head? But I would say, if I were there, if I was being their couples therapist, I would say, okay, well, we got to talk about this sort of behavior for both of you and how you're going to define this. For Jasmine, I could see it going one and or of another way. One is that it's a worry of preoccupation that for him to do that, it feels like a threat because you aren't doing it with you, because he's not doing it with her, and that means that he's more independent, or he might be thinking about other people or something like that, and that'll happen. You'll see this actually going in various different directions, gender-wise. For you'll see in heterosexual relationships, some men will be jealous of, will actually sometimes even go as far as forbid their partner from doing that, particularly using implements because they feel insecure about themselves. Anyway, so there's that. Is Jasmine coming from that place? Because we can imagine that she isn't, that that her policy about it's just like cheating, is it because it feels like a threat that you could work on? Like if you're Gino, you could say, it's not a threat. I'm not thinking about anyone else. I'm only thinking about you, or whatever. There's certain that could be solved. Or is it just a belief system, a religion, a moral, a more, if you will, a value that she's entitled to, that she's also entitled to not budging on if she doesn't feel like it. Like I said, this is something that should be discussed early in a relationship and decided upon, because the way Gino's talking, I don't think he's going to, it's not like he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I had a slip up, I'm going to get back on the wagon, because he's likely, it sounds like he's going to, do that occasionally.
look at Mike. I'm sorry, that's...
Okay, so yeah, I remember that night. I was super tired.
Not tired enough to play with pee-pee.
I didn't have enough energy to
Okay.
do the wild thing.
All right.
Things are funny. Sex is funny, and playing with one's pee-pee, I guess, is funny in a certain context. But it's interesting to see the other cast members. Gino and Jasmine are having a mature conversation about human sexuality and life, and Mike is, falling apart with humor and making jokes. It's fine. It's just not, but it does fit with the conceptualization that Mike is immature. Not that he's some kind of child or something, but that he's inexperienced, that he has not had experiences with dating and sexuality such that he still has a lot of giggliness about, it's fine to giggle. It's fine to laugh. I will talk about sexuality with clients and with students, and there's a certain amount of jokiness that will happen that I think is fine, but at a certain point, and you can almost see that, and we'll rewind it, is for Gino, he's kind of looking like Mike, like, yeah, what's the big deal? There's a little bit of, why are you, is this supposed to be like a joke? And at a certain point, we want to get past that. And I would teach sex ed to ninth graders for a number of years, 12 years or something. And I would find that, one, we would always do this game at the beginning where we'd sort of get out our giggles. We'd yell certain anatomy parts and giggle, and then we'd say, okay, so let's move past the giggling and let's talk in a mature way. And I found that the ninth graders were very good at adjusting, like very quickly. They went, if you set up the right environment and you lead well and you create safety, the ninth graders were in a lot of ways more mature than the adults. I would talk with the teachers outside of the class about what we might talk about, and I saw often more immaturity and fear from the teachers than I did from the ninth graders. So I don't know why I'm saying that, but so I'm not saying that when you're young, you're automatically super giggly. What am I saying? I think that, again, jokes are fine. Comedies about sexual things, as long as it's not oppressive or harmful to people, yeah, it's super funny. I was just off topic. I mean, it's on this topic, but American Pie, remember that movie in the 90s? That was a phenomenon. That was, especially to maybe teenagers. I was in my mid-20s, I believe. What year did that movie come out? Such that I did not think that movie was all that, late 90s, 1999. So I was 28 at the time, and I remember seeing the movie and just being like, yeah, okay. It's just a bubblegum sort of throwaway movie, but it was such a phenomenon. If you weren't a teenager when American Pie came out, you might not know this, but it was like, I'm guessing every single high school student and middle school student in the United States saw that movie, American Pie. And just yesterday, I can't remember how it came up, but I saw a clip on YouTube of the movie, and I was shocked at how awful that movie is in terms of promoting sexism, misogyny, rape culture, psychopathic behavior. It is awful. And it's interesting because if that movie had even 10% of that stuff in a movie that was made today, it would immediately be boycotted by 75% of Americans. And it just points to, I think, in my opinion, that we have progressed. We're often talking about how the world is going down the tubes, but there are so many things that we can point to and say we have succeeded as a society. I, as a professor and therapist and podcaster, have been promoting anti-rape culture, anti-sexism, anti-misogyny, anti-sex negativity throughout my career. And some of you have done the same, either in my field or just in life or in other fields. And all of us, the millions of us who have pushed our society forward and have questioned certain things and been a party pooper at times, watching a movie with your friends and going like, I don't like that joke. That's a misogynistic joke. That's a party pooper. That is being a bummer. You might be that one voice in 1999 that's going, that joke is not okay. And no one appreciates that, but you spoke up, or at the very least, you didn't laugh at the joke. All of us doing that. 23 years later, when we look at American Pie, we loathe, the majority of us, most of the humor in that movie, whereas in 1999, 99% of the people who watched that movie thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. Another success story is the majority of Americans support gay marriage. That was not the case in the 90s. When I was advocating and voting for gay rights in the 1990s, I did not think in my lifetime that I would see every state in my country having legal gay marriage. I never thought that would happen. And for young people today, it might be like, well, it's obvious. Yeah, it was obvious. It was obvious to many of us in the 90s. But the way that the country was, it was like This is never going to happen. But it did happen, you know? A lot of people on the different political spectrum than you actually support gay marriage. Why is that? Well, it's because we advocated, we picketed, we spoke up, we did scientific studies. We talked about it. We had representation in movies and television shows. We had news reporters who, you know, reported on certain things and maybe, you know, downplayed other things, you know. We worked on it and we pushed it forward. And so the things that we're working on today, whether it's anti-war, anti-misogyny, pro-environmentalism, we have succeeded in the past and we can succeed again. But we all have to do our part. How did I get to this point? My dog is barking.
Jasmine, why do you consider that cheating?
I have discovered that Gino prefers to masturbate rather than making love to me.
Gino, is that true?
Yes,
No,
it
that's
is.
not true.
All right, so she's saying, I've discovered that he likes to have solo fun times rather than having sex with me. And then he says, no, that's not true. So I think for Jasmine, she considers it a threat. It hurts her feelings. It's consistent with her reactivity that she would misinterpret it as a threat. And she's angry about it. There's nothing wrong with her considering it cheating. There's nothing wrong with it bothering her. She's like, I wanted to have sex with you, and instead you do this other thing, and that bums me out. That's okay. But we're starting to get into emotional space and language, I don't know, of coercion over his body, over her saying, you can't do that, and you won't do it, and punishing him for doing something that a lot of people do. So I hope it doesn't go there, and I hope it hasn't gone there.
It's not true.
The problem is not his performance, because when he make love to me, it's good. I enjoy it. It's so freaking good. But the problem is the quantity. Like the last time he came to Panama, he stayed here a month and we only made love once.
Did she just flip off the camera? Let's rewind that, because they blurred her finger, which makes me, I don't think she was intending to, but do Panamanians count with the middle finger? Let's rewind that.
The problem is the quantity. Like the last time he came to Panama, he stayed here a month and we only made love once.
Yeah, I mean, Panamanians out there. In the United States, we go 1, 2, 3. Do you start with the middle finger when you're counting one? It just reminds me of that scene in Inglourious Basterds where it's discovered that he's a spy because he says 2 like this, or 2 like this, or 3 like this instead of 3 like this. I don't even know if that's true about Germans. Anyway, point is that she is saying that we only had sex one time. She's also saying that she really enjoys sex and that he's good in bed. And, okay, that is good for them. But she's saying a month and we only had sex one time. Okay, so often in relationships, if not universal, in couples, there is always a libido difference. Whether it's up here, you know, one person wants to have sex every day and the other person wants to have sex twice a day, or it's down here where one person wants to have sex once a week and the other person wants to have sex once every 2 months. There's almost always a difference in relationships, particularly as time goes on in a relationship. And that's okay, it's normal. How do you discuss it with the other person? Often it can lead to a lot of hurt feelings for the high libido person, and then there's attacks. And that can actually cause a cascade problem where the low libido relative to the other, because of course, say Gino is a once a month sort of person. Well, he could be with someone who only wants it once a year. And so Gino would be the high libido person. So and there's a lot of range. You know, some people want to have sex 3 times a day, like Colt, which is fine. Some people might not ever want to have sex because they're asexual or something. You know, there's a huge range, and all of it is normal, and we don't want to shame any of it because it's fine. It's how you communicate about it. Are you coercive? Not okay. Are you mean about it? Are you withholding? Not okay. your preference is your preference. That's okay. But when the high libido person is pressuring or angry or distancing or abusive, then the low libido person is even less likely to want to have sex with the high libido person, because we can all understand why. It's just like out of resentment, or out of like, I'm shutting down emotionally, and therefore I'm scared of you, and that doesn't really turn me on. It doesn't really attract me to you. There's a lot of reasons why that would be. So I wonder if that's what happened, or if Gino is just, a once a month sort of person. Or, I mean, there's a whole slew of reasons. And like I was saying earlier, there's so many things to talk. One of the hardest things that I have done as a supervisor when I'm talking with my supervisees is trying to help my supervisees with talking with their clients about sexuality, because there are so many avenues to explore. Gino could have sexual abuse history such that it complicates his arousal or his motivation for engaging in sexual interactions. He could have insecurities about his body. He could have insecurities about taking off his hat. He could have concerns about being attacked. He could have worries about performance, which is just, he could have a lot on his mind. He could have stress. He could be depressed. He could be anxious. All of those often will involve, he could be on a medication that could reduce his libido or reduce his erection readiness. And there's so many avenues to take. So we don't know. And I'm guessing we're not going to know, but let's watch some more.
And now I don't know what to think. Please talk to me, Gino. What's the freaking issue? Is that you prefer to be masturbating?
Where do you get the idea that I'm masturbating?
Jasmine, did you see him do it?
No.
Baby, I do your laundry.
Okay. So there's a lot to say there. I don't doubt her, but so she's inspecting all of his things for that and cataloging it. That's not a good development or a pleasant image. So there's that. Is it reasonable that she would think that he's lying? Yes, because he has demonstrated himself on camera lying twice in a very pathological manner. Those alone would challenge anyone's trust of another person, but we're just going to take a guess and say that those aren't the only two lies that he's committed in this relationship. Who knows? But he's saying that, so she's accusing him that he likes to do it more than having sex with her. One, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with, and of course, for some people, particularly men, to be accused of that, it's like you're not a real man, or your wife is gross to you, or not, there's all sorts of implications about that. There are plenty of people who enjoy sexuality, and doing it alone or doing it with other people has pros and cons to it. And if they had to choose, like they're on a desert island, some people might actually choose to do alone stuff because for the pros and the cons, when they weigh it all out, they would rather give up with other people than alone. They like that more, and vice versa. So there's a lot of variance there, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't indicate some sort of pathology. Those are all based on notions of ridiculousness in religion and Victorianism that says that doing things by yourself is somehow a sin, and it's just not. It's fine. So who knows what's happening? I'm guessing we won't know because they're not going to go into depth, and two, Gino might lie through the whole thing, so who knows what's happening. But this is a troubling dynamic. They have a lot to talk about, but the way they're talking about it is he's avoiding and lying, and she's accusing and judging, which is not a good road to go down. I could ruin their sexuality and thus really challenge their relationship, the way they're talking about it.
I don't want to be that specific. I do your laundry. I know what's going on.
I'm telling you, well, whatever you're saying is not what you think, because I'm just telling you for a fact that
Okay.
it's not the case.
Oh, man.
Physically, for a man, you need to drain your freaking balls one way or the other.
Okay, interesting phrasing, but that's another myth. It's not true. Plenty of men do not orgasm as frequently as what I believe Jasmine believes to be healthy. And this is a paternalistic idea that I remember it being told to me when I was young. You know, this whole idea of blue thing. I don't know what's going to get me flagged on YouTube, but or having backup and having problems cognitively. There's also the flip side of there's a lot of pseudoscience and myths on the flip side that in order to perform well in a sport, you need to withhold from drainage for a certain amount of time. It's all ridiculous. There's some science that shows that for some people there might be an effect there along those lines, but generally speaking, it's all just myths. But the paternalistic idea, of course, is very self-serving to heterosexual males to say that we will be harmed physically and emotionally and cognitively if we don't have drainage every now and then. For men, they're trying to impose their wishes on other people, and if they can't get their way, then they have to invoke some pseudoscience to motivate other people and to provoke some sort of compassion, some sort of pity, a pity-F drainage, if you will. I remember hearing that from people and believing it when I was young, but then learning in the science when I became a therapist that that's all nonsense. She is believing that. And this is what will happen for people that are preoccupied sometimes, is that, or anxious, about their attachments, is like, well, if he's not having sex with me, he must be doing something, because men can't go that long without doing that. So they must be cheating, or they must be doing this. And it's possible, but it's not automatically true, right? It's possible that he just, he's cool with it being at a lower frequency than she thinks is normal. But I'm wondering where she get this phrasing from, draining. She's saying it in such a kind of matter-of-fact way. And because when I hear that phrase, it's usually in a particular context, not pleasant conversation, which, it's fine to phrase it how you want to, but I don't know, just particular.
If I'm not the one draining your balls, who is it?
Right, there it is. If I'm not the one, then who is it? So that's a very common preoccupied attachment thing. In fact, for some people who are preoccupied, they are so worried they're going to lose their partner that 9 times out of 10, the reason why they're actually hitting on their partner to have sex or, proposing that, it's not out of a desire to have a mutual interaction. It's out of fear. If they don't have sex with me every day, they're going to have sex with someone else, or they're going to forget me, or, I need that reassurance. And that isn't awful, but we would hope that the person would be able to recognize their insecurities and address it in a more direct, satisfying way, rather than pushing someone to do something that they don't want to do. So with Gino and Jasmine in the beginning, I was like, whoa, that's a lot of control. That's worrisome. Then when he arrived in Panama, I was like, oh, okay, wow, they seem extremely compatible. They have very similar laughs. They seem to have genuine affection and chemistry, and so, okay. And then she had the big blow up in the gym about the decor, and we're like, whoa, that was a massive trigger over essentially nothing. But then I was like, uh-oh, that looks like something. Then afterwards, she seemed to recover pretty quickly. I'm like, okay, and she's recovering. And then I saw that interview where she was saying that he's a good person and that she overreacts sometimes. I'm like, okay, insight, that's good. Then we saw him with the lies, and we're like, uh-oh. And she had a big blow up from that, which made sense to me. She ended up accepting him back. I think he apologized enough. I think the apology was in there. We probably saw 2% of what was really going on with him at the time. I was hoping he would be more emotive, but he was, I think, sincere and sad and recognized eventually the impact that it had. She accepted him back. They had another little couple fights, the name change and stuff, but then they quickly recovered. She was vulnerable. He cried. And at the end of the season, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe all the big conflict is behind them. And because sometimes that'll happen, you have a rocky period and then you sort of level off. It doesn't look like that's happening though.
Confess, I'm more into masturbation, baby. And if that is the case, I want, to masturbate the two of us together. But
okay, so she's trying to compromise, which is good. I wonder though if this is emerging for her out of the fact that they're not in the same country. She's in Panama, I think, and he's in the States. And so they're still working, I believe, on their K-1, I'm not sure. So they're not together, and that's going to raise, if you're a preoccupied, attached individual, if you suffer from preoccupied attachment, and you have a long distance period of time with your partner, it's going to raise your anxiety for obvious reasons. So I'm wondering if that's happening. I kind of hope that's what's happening, because then once they're together, this kind of reactivity will go down. But anyway, she's throwing out a suggestion, which is fine. She's like, hey, if you want to do that, let's do it together. Which is fine. That's a great kind of conversation starter, options there. For many people, I don't know about Gino, doing it alone, it's not the physical thing per se, it's the fact that you're doing it alone. You don't have, for a lot of people, the pro to doing it alone is you don't have to put energy into it as much. And if I were there and that was the case, I was a couples therapist, we could talk about, say Gino, who knows? We use this as a jumping off point. So if you're one of those people that at least kind of has that, what she at least is accusing him of, one of the things to explore is how can you make, if you want, which is up to you, together sexual interactions, how can you make it less work for you? Meaning less pressure or less worries or maybe even less energy, less physical expenditure. That's a conversation. Because especially if your partner is lamenting the fact that you're not doing it as often, then that's a conversation to have. So, and I find that a lot of couples will fall into a pattern, a routine that sometimes benefits from, adjusting. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.